Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pursuit Live. I'm your producer, Chris, fresh in from Africa, still kicking the red dust out of everything that I own. Joining me, as always, my partner in lives, Mr. Dave Hawkins.
What's up, brother? Welcome back.
Thanks, buddy. So we apologize. We had some technical difficulties getting started here, but we got it sorted out. I think we got a great show. So if you didn't mind the wait, you're definitely in for a great show tonight. So joining us tonight is Mr. Jaret Owens, the founder of Alaska Guide Creations. Jaret, thank you for joining us, buddy.
No, you're welcome. I apologize. I'm not very good on these computers.
That's all right. If you could prop it up a little bit more. We can't see your face. So while Jaret's getting squared away here, we'll just run through everything. We've had an interesting last couple weeks. You know, I was out of the country. Dave took the reins and handled the show. Then I took over.
Canceled. We did good.
You did good. You made it happen. Then the following week, we managed to stay awake and sober enough to talk about what was going on in South Africa, and now we're all back here, ready to go. And I think this is going to be a good show. Jaret is a well experienced hunter. I think he's probably forgotten more about hunting than all of us watching collectively know. So this I think this is going to be a good one.
Yes. I will say this, Jaret, thank you very much for joining tonight. And I'll say this, so you were not put on this earth to worry about computers and laptops. You were put on this earth for exactly what you've done in your career. And that's why we wanted to have a chance to talk to you tonight, because it's truly impressive. So you're going to have fun tonight. We're going to get to tell your story with everybody.
Well, thank you.
All right. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys are ready. Let's kick this off here.
Yeah. All right. So, Jaret, if you don't mind, what we like to do in the beginning of the show is we obviously like to introduce our guest and give them a little bit of like a personal background just to get us going. And then as the show progresses, there'll be certain topics specific that we'll ask you. But we want to let, really, if anybody doesn't happen to know who you are or what your accomplishments are, give them that background story.
Sure. What would you like to know? Or
well, I mean, we could start, pretty much however early on you want, but what really, like, where are you located? What really drove you to this passion that you have, obviously, that basically encompasses everything in the outdoor world, all the hunts you've been on? What got you going at an early age?
I guess I grew up in Monticello, Utah, and I was 2 or 3 years old. I watched my dad dragging in big bucks. In those days, the deer were extremely abundant. You could shoot three, and the game warden give you permits to shoot 3 more. And
wow.
But it was a different time. And then we moved to California. My dad was a school teacher. I grew up in a small town of Ojai, where I'm at right now. And in Chumash, Ojai means mountains, and we're circled around mountains. And I could walk from my house and find deer, bear, lion, and lots of game. And my dad made the mistake of taking me hunting, I guess, and he said that was a big mistake because that's all I had on my brain, and they couldn't stop it, And I just that's all I lived for, and I had one actual real job in my life. I worked for the Forest Service as a firefighter, but I was always in the mountains hunting before work and after work, and everywhere I wasn't supposed to be according to the Forest Service, but anyway, I was always hunting, and I run into a guide that worked out on Santa Cruz Island, which is just 14 miles off the coast of Ventura, 14 miles from Ojai. And he hooked me up, and I started guiding the sheep and boar hunts on Santa Cruz Island. And there's thousands and thousands of animals out there. and we had 27 hunters a week, and 3 guides, and we had 3 or 4 hunters in each Jeep, and you know, we were bringing in 70, 80 animals a week, and it was a busy deal. And then from the hunters, it's kind of hooked me up with, they're hunting all over the world, and they kind of hooked me up with a guide in Alaska. Next thing I knew, I was guiding in Alaska, and and as far as the binoculars are your most valuable asset in hunting. And I remember buying a pair of LEITZ binoculars, and they were like $300 or $400, and that was like 3,000 or 4,000 now. And I wanted to protect those binoculars, so I got a piece of leather and I sewed up a little pouch, and then I ended up putting it around my chest, and it was kind of sloppy, but it worked, and it kept the snow and rain and dirt out. And then I made another little place to put fire starter and a flashlight and a few little items. And then when I got done with that hunting season, I got my boots resoled. I asked the shoe man if he could sew up a better pouch than what I had, and for my binoculars, because he had a sewing machine.
Sure.
And he made the first real bino pack, and then I kept making them, and for 20 years I just kept making them better. And then the hunters would say, God, who do you got to know to get one of these? And little by little, and then I started going to hunting shows. I was helping booking some of the hunting trips for different outfitters and such. And then I'd show the pack to different optics companies and stuff, but a lot of my friends thought I was nuts. They go, oh, what's that stupid thing? But anyway, then I had a friend that helped me. Oh, it was after 20 years of it. He helped me do a website and make them. And then I started doing that. Then I had a friend that was telling me you got to go to China, or you're going to be financial. You're going to, you're going to be broke, if you don't make them in China. And I told him, if I have to make them in China, I don't want to make them. And he said, that's financial suicide, and he says, you're the best guide in the world, but you're the worst businessman in the world. and anyway, I was stubborn, and I have a friend, my cousin hooked me up with some different sewing contractors in Utah and wherever, and they started making them for me, and then it took off. And then next thing, and I'd also guided the owner of Swarovski for many trips, and made good friends with them, and they wanted to go in hunting business with me, the owners, and we had some meetings with some different people, but we never did make it happen. But they're wonderful people to work with. And then after that, the Bino Pack took off, and I'm the worst businessman. He was right. Guys would call up and they go, I don't know which pack to get. And I'd say, I'll send you 3 or 4 of them, and then you tell me what you like and send the rest back. And people liked the old fashioned way I did business, but it was really bad business. But I would talk to them forever, too long and everything. But I was going till 7 days a week till 10 o'clock at night. And then my parents are in their 90s, and they were having health issues, and I was stressed out getting them to the hospital. And my dad was tough, but nobody lasts forever. And then I met a guy on the phone named Zach Jones, who's in Utah and who's a partner with me now. And he called up and he said, would you be interested in selling your business or working something out? And he caught me at the right time. And I said, yes, we need to talk. And then he said, well, I could come down in a few weeks. And I said, no, come down tomorrow. I was pulling my hair out because things were getting, and he came down the next day with his buddy Chad. And I explained what I was doing, and I told him this Bino Pack rocks, but I suck at business. yeah, in ways, and those guys are really sharp, and we hit it off good. And to this day, they're taking the business to the moon, and they've done a great job. And I talked to them today. They're in Price, Utah, and they've really done a wonderful job. And I go to the shows with them, and people call and I talk to people, but they're doing 99% of the work now. And I'd like to be more involved, but it's just that they're in Utah and I'm here. But I do go to the shows with them, and I'm always coming up with new ideas on packs and stuff. And they're doing great.
Well, without a doubt, you should definitely keep a sense of pride, because without all the work and the time you invested early on, especially in that trial period, it wouldn't be the product that it is today. So without a doubt, don't ever, it's definitely a tip of the hat what you were able to establish. And there's nothing wrong with delegating. Essentially, once you reach a certain point where you're that busy, you do have to establish that team, and that normally means that the business and the product is doing well. So it's. I am just curious, in the early stages of binoculars, let's talk. What do you think was more of an issue? Was it more of a condensation issue with the lens, or was it actual damage just from trucking through the woods, or actual damage to the lens, or was it both you were noticing?
Well, in open country, in hunting, the most valuable tool you have is optics, and the very best optics, in my opinion, are the European optics, which is Swarovski, Leica's Ice, in that order to me. And it's just imperative. They're so valuable, and at that time, it was my most important possession, and I wanted to protect it. And I went up to Alaska, and in Alaska, before you can become a guide, you got to be a packer and hang out and learn the ropes, and they give you all the crap jobs. And I remember the outfitter, this is 50 years ago, in 71, the outfitter's binoculars fogged up, and he says, "Let me use your binoculars." I said, "No way." Thing I know, I got mad and said, "You go guide the hunters," He sent me out with a guy. Somebody else was sick or hurt, I can't remember. And next thing, I came back with a sheep. I was pushing a little bit, and then he said, "Have at it, guide them." In those days they didn't do everything exactly by the book, maybe, but we got the job done.
Different era. That's all right.
All
right, producer Chris, why don't you hop in, buddy? I know these types of hunts are right up your strong suit. And I am curious to hear a little bit more about the actual guiding aspect of it, and the wide variety of hunts that Jaret's been on.
All right, so before we really get into the stories, because I know if there's somebody who's got some amazing hunting stories, it's this man right here. So I do want to dig into a few things. Now, anybody who's anybody now has a bino harness. If you're in the woods, you probably have one. And the product that really kind of started it all was this right here.
Correct.
So I do want to ask some questions. I kind of want to get into this a little bit, because this really is the standard when it comes to binocular packs. Now, everybody has their own individual ones. I'm very particular about my gear, but I do want to talk to you about the inspiration on this pack. Now, how did you land on this design right here?
Well, it just evolved, I guess. I just made a basic pouch to keep the dirt and the rain and the snow out, and protect the binocular from normal binoculars. Obviously, they hang around your neck before the pouch, and the strap cuts into your neck, and then you bend over, and you bend over to pick something up, and your binoculars swinging around and banging around, and then you're eating cookies or whatever, and the crumbs fall on the binoculars. The dirt, whatever, it just, you got to keep, and the optics, the glass and the lenses, it's so important to keep them clean. And, and then the European optics are so expensive, you don't want to bang them around. You want to really protect them. And,
I know.
and then in a perfect world, if you could just hold your hand up and the binocular comes into your hand when you need them, that would be the next best thing or the best thing. But with the pouch, it's real close. It's right there, and you pull it out and you glass and you stick it right back in very quickly and smoothly and quietly. And you're walking under branches with snow, and then how the snow falls off the trees. And,
Yep.
And one little deal like that puts you out of commission, for to clean them. But I carry a lot of things inside the pack, just little things that are very helpful for survival. Sometimes I tell the hunters, your backpack when you're sheep hunting is like your scuba tank. You're not supposed to take it off when you're diving, because you get separated from your pack. Sometimes the guys will want to take their pack off and stalk in on a sheep. The next thing they know, they wounded it and they're 3 canyons over and it's starting to storm and the sleeping bag and all that's in their pack and they're in trouble. And so I try to, but the one thing about the vinyl pack, it's kind of a little bit like military. I guess you have some of your first line equipment. So you always have your fire starter. You always have your game calls. You always have a light, and just little things like that are very handy. And when it's in your backpack, it's harder to get at and takes more time. You always got some extra bullets, or I always like to have a deer call and a varmint call in there. I can remember I was out moose hunting with a guy. We're walking along, and this is an interesting story. I don't know if I should get into it, but the guy told me, he says, man, he came on the moose hunt. He says, Jaret, I'd really like to shoot a wolf. And I said, man, we'll sure try. But I said, to be honest with you, we don't have many wolves around here. I think they're up high with the caribou right now. And I don't see wolves here very often, but we'll do our best we can. But the next day we're walking, and then he came by an hour later and he says, Jaret, and I go, what? He says, well, I was thinking I'd really like to shoot a black wolf. And I'm going, this guy's dreaming, they just not in reality to what's going on up here. And I was thinking to myself, geez, next thing he's going to want Bigfoot or a glacier bear or something, or dinosaur, I don't know. But anyway, I was walking along with him and another guy, and the dang wolf started howling. Well, I just instantly pulled out my predator call and said, get behind these bushes and hold still. And I started calling, and right out of the timber and the spruce trees, a wolf comes running out. And guess what color it was? Black. And it come right up to 150 yards, and he had the 375, and he shot it. That was more gun than he needed, but it dropped over real good. And he was just happy as a clam, But having that
look good.
it's just anyway, it's I don't know. It's just handy.
Yeah.
No,
Chris.
I listen, I'm very particular about my gear, and everybody knows I'm kind of a junkie, but I will say, number one, the one thing that I like, as was mentioned, it's made in America. This is an American product by Americans. For Americans, but also for everybody else in the world that uses these things. And it's loaded with features. Anybody that's seen this pack, anybody that's watched or read any hunting magazines, you'll see this pack everywhere. Everybody's using these, and it's definitely an ingenious design, and it definitely incorporates a number of features that, as you said, you don't have to go digging around in your backpack for. Everything is right here. It's readily available. It's your first line kit. It's ready to be used. I do want to ask you one question, Jaret, that I ask everybody, and seeing how you are you are the guy who kind of brought this all to us with this in mind. What are the 3 most essential pieces of gear for you when you go afield? It doesn't matter what you're pursuing. What are the 3 things that you absolutely have to carry with you?
Just 3? I mean, I have lots of them.
Your top 3.
Well, I always like a light because it does get dark sometimes. And I always have a knife, but that's on me. But sometimes I have an extra one in there. I think it's always good to have some form of fire starter. And I'm really big into deer calls. And game calls. I mean, there's lots of other things in my pack I carry, just tons of little things. You could put 20 different items in there, in extra ammo, flagging tape, toilet paper. There's so many things you can, but you kind of design that to your needs, and where,
So now that we've kind of gotten the business end here and kind of the thought process behind,
I actually have 2
problem.
questions real quick,
Yep.
just to wrap up on the pouch. I'm curious about the materials. Obviously, over the years, obviously different materials have evolved. It sounded like the original pouches were almost primarily leather, which could actually probably get pretty heavy if they get wet. And then about how the actual pouch closes. Was it always kind of standard? It had some type of magnet built into it, a soft close magnet system? Or was there an evolution for that process?
Well, my first was leather, and I was talking to Zach today about, and we've made some, but I said I think we should have a original one out of leather still, but without all the pockets. The thing about leather, it gets wet and it kind of conforms to the binocular. It's kind of like a pistol holster. How it after time, leather conforms to whatever it's around.
Okay.
And then it slides out better, generally speaking.
Okay.
But most binoculars used to be pebble finish. They didn't have the rubber coatings that we do now. And that pebble finish Leicas I used to have, man, they just slide out slick, smooth. But even so, I think leather is better in that way, but it's not practical. Cordura and all these other materials are much more practical and economical, and dry quicker. But I still like the leather.
That's all right. I was just curious about it. Yeah, and it does make a good point. The holster analogy, I think that's a perfect analogy because that's totally easy to understand and grasp. That's great. Great inside info. Yeah, Chris, that's all. I just had 2 questions written down.
No, that's it. So I do want to leave a lot of time here in the show for some story time because I know you've got more. You probably have more stories than all of us, all of our viewers could ever dream to have. So I really want to kind of dig into some of your experiences here.
I guess, or because I don't remember, or I have to think of it. I don't know what you want to know.
So I guess I'll start with this question before we get into the stories. Maybe along the way in the business, whether it was guiding or creating outdoor products, what was something that maybe went right initially, and then maybe what was something that maybe didn't go right, or something that was a lesson learned that helped you along the way?
What went in the business?
Sure, whether it's guiding or making the products, anything like that.
What went right or didn't go right?
Yeah, either or. What it was something that either went very, very well and helped you, or something that didn't go right and that you learned from and were able to do something better.
Ooh, that's a good question. What went right? I mean, I just loved outdoors and hunting, and and I mean, I learned a lesson guiding hunters, lots of lessons, different ways. every trip is a learning experience. But I don't, it's hard for me to think of exactly what, there's thousands of things you learn just being in the field, and some things you learn the hard way, and some things, you shouldn't have done that, or I should have brought this equipment with me, or, I should have had a better light, or I should have had an extra light or extra batteries, or, you just learn, we all learn from being out in the field, and but it's hard for me right now to think of any particular thing.
I'm going to spin the question, I think, Chris. Do you have a certain hunt or a guiding experience that it really just, anytime you do happen to think about it, you're like, man, that's one I'm really proud of. We really got it done on that trip. Not necessarily has to be the biggest trophy taken, but maybe there was just, you guys really worked for it. It was a tricky hunt, but at the end of the hunt, you and the team were standing over a great harvest. Do you have one like that you could share with everybody?
Oh, I got tons of them, but
All right.
You gotta be more.
That is a good problem to have as an accomplished hunter. I will give you that.
I don't. In guiding, I've met a tremendous amount of wonderful people. I don't know if I'm getting off track here.
No, it's all right.
I met people I met a guy, his name was Peter Pulitzer from Florida. And I met him up there guiding him and his wife on a caribou hunt. And we just hit it off right. It really hit it off. And he invited me to come hunting, over there for pigs and alligators and deer and all that. And I brought my girlfriend. We went over and had a blast. And then I hooked him up with a trip in Canada. And then he says, you got to come to Bahamas. And he was a serious diver. And I went down there, and he had a big, beautiful boat, and the whole in other boats and captain and crew. And he had me on his boat I was at 30, 40 years. I was out there on his boat every summer. He was my best friend. I was his best friend. And he taught me to dive and hunt underwater. And I'll tell you, in all the hunting I've done, I haven't done it for a long time, but that was the funnest hunting. Guiding, you got to be used to being beat up and lonely and wet and cold and everything else. And your muscles are so tired and you're beat up and you get your hunters filled out. Now the fresh new hunters fly in. You got to be smiling and ready to go again.
That's true. That's true.
And attitude and get out there and do it. And but man, when I went on that diving and I love that clear warm water and dive down 30, 40 feet and get lobsters and groupers and all these pretty girls in bikinis. That's the best hunting I've ever done, but that's the most enjoyable because I wasn't tired. I wasn't sore. I was, it was, I know that's not the kind of hunting you're thinking about, but I really enjoyed that. and then he would come to Alaska. And in fact, he lined up a trip in Russia, and I went over there on a bear hunt.
Oh, wow.
And really enjoyed that,
I'm going to ask a question, and if it is a difficult question, maybe it is. Do you regret how dedicated you've been and how much time you actually have devoted to all of your guiding experiences, or you're very happy with, like, you just knew that this was who you are while you were put on this earth, and it really is just a part of who you are?
I look back at it and I don't, and people, my family, they're frustrated with me because I was so obsessed. All my brothers and sisters got married and all those different types of things. I never was there. They said, well, he's guiding, he's hunting, what's your priority? Well, Jaret's hunting, and I was pretty bad in that department, I guess. And but do I regret? If I had it over, I'd done twice as much.
I had a feeling that was the answer coming.
I don't know. Because right now I'm 75 and I just had a new hip, and I went up to Alaska a year and a half ago or whatever it was, and I was gonna go do some fishing. I was gonna go see some relatives, and I was going to. I wanted to go see my old boss I guided for, Steve Black in Kenai, and I went up there and I got this stupid COVID, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good, and so and then my hip was hurt, and I just laid on the couch, and I always talked about writing stories, and I did write 100 pages, and I did that, and but I was, and then I went to see my buddy Steve Black, who you might like this story. I can tell you later, but I drug him. I broke my back 3 or 4 months before, but I was healed up, and I was guiding a brown bear hunt, and they were flying around checking on me, and make a long story short, they crashed the plane and the pilot was killed, and I drug him down the mountain. I'll tell you that later if you want, but anyway, I went to go see him, and then I was really sad to find out that he just passed away 6 months before, and so we're all getting older, and but he was a good guy, and but you just become you really become close to these hunters, because maybe closer than their wives. I don't know how to say it. When you go on a 10-day hunt or whatever it is, and you're out there in the bad weather, and you're in a 2-man tent and getting across some of these rivers and getting washed, it's a lot of tough deals. You become tight with your hunters and buddies, and they, I've slept in. I know I shouldn't tell you this. I've slept in a sleeping bag with other guys. I mean, it's so cold, yep. and it's not because we're that good of buddies, but it's we got one sleeping bag and there's a foot of snow on the ground, and we got problems, and you just got to take, that's a long story, but
it's, hey, if it's that cold, then that was the decision. I'm sure it was warranted.
You become close to these people.
No, that's very well said. It's all these stories you're sharing. I promise you, this is exactly what this show is about, and why we wanted to have you on. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
No, you might like that story. I'll tell you if you want.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Right now? Yeah, floor's yours. It's your story. Tell it.
I got to think for a minute to remember it. I'm thinking about 1984. I was working for Steve Black, and I'd lined up the hunters, and I had a guy his name was Jim Rockstead, we'd hunted a lot together, and he'd hunted all over the world. And Jim wanted to get a big brown bear, and I was always telling him about all the big bears I got. And the next thing I know, he booked a hunt, and we were in a good place on the Alaska Peninsula on the Pacific side, and we're up on the vantage points early in the spring. The spring is my favorite time to hunt big bears. They come out first, and there's no leaves on the alders, and it's real, and a lot of snow on the mountains, and you watch all the other bears sliding down the snow and wrestling, and it's just beautiful. The 50% of the time the weather sucks, but when the weather gets good, it's wonderful. And we glassed for 6 days and just didn't see much. And it's kind of how do I say it? When you're a guide, you guide, when you guide one of your friends or really good buddies, you can only hunt so hard. You can only look through those binoculars so hard. You got to relax, but if you're not seeing the game, it turns into a stress. And he wasn't complaining, but it's still a stress on me, because I've been telling about all these big bears, and here it's the 6th day and we haven't seen nothing. or we've seen some sows and cubs and, you know, a 7-footer or whatever, but nothing, you know, he wants a big 9-foot or better bear. And in that, finally, I spotted a big bear, and he was big, but he was way too high up in the snow and way too far to go after. And we had no business going after that bear in a normal situation. But Jim was young and had a lot of energy, and he'd hunted all over the world, and I was too. And he says, let's go for it, you know? And I said, man, it's going to be tough. Let's go. But we did it. And we hiked for an hour and a half before we hit the bear's tracks. He was way up high in the snow. And we followed the tracks for hours. And some places that bear, it was so steep, you almost needed crampons to keep from sliding. But we went all the way across for several hours and couldn't find him. And then we started dropping down, and then I glassed and I spotted that bear way down in the alders sleeping, you know, and where he'd gone that direction. But the way the terrain, it's hard to describe it. The way the terrain was, we were on another ridge, but it was too far to shoot across. And so I got on the varmint call and woke him up, and the bear started walking down, you know, and then he was going through the alders, and it was a later spring, so there's leaves on the alders, and you couldn't see the bear, but you just see the alders moving, going down. So we raced down the other ridge all the way down to the bottom of the canyon, and there's a little river down there, and we crossed the river, and we sat up there as a perfect setup, and that big old bear, you could see the alders moving, and we're all excited. He's just coming right to us. It's a perfect setup. And he came down, he's on the other side of the river, and Jim had a 350 Magnum. I had a 375. And I kept telling Jim, why did you bring that BB gun? You got to, you know, use my 375. These bears are big, you know. And then when that bear popped out, his eyes, you know, he goes, wow. And I handed him a 375, and he was happy to take it. And he put 3 bullets. He hit that bear 3 times really good. And then I handed him a 350, and he hit it 3 more times real good while I loaded the 375. And after 6 shots, the bear was down. He hit it really good in the chest every time. And those big bears, that's the secret, is as soon as you get one in the chest, get another one in, you know, and before they get in the brush. But anyway, this bear went up in the alders and died, and we were all excited. You know, our whole luck has changed just like that. And we crossed the river. We're in our ankle, foot, hip boots and stuff. Wasn't that deep, and, you know, a foot and a half. And we got over the other side, and we crawled up in the alders, and, you know, it's 1,000-pound, 10-foot bear. And it's like moving Jello, one leg at a time, you know. And we got him down to the edge of the river, and we're all happy. And I was getting ready. I said, God, I gotta get my camera out. We got to get some pictures of this monster, you know. And right then, that's when this whole hunt changed. And you just never know what's next. And I heard a whistle, and something told me, or God told me, that there was a problem. And I said, Jim, I heard a whistle. And Jim says, just a parka squirrel. I said, Jim, there's a foot of snow on the ground. There ain't no parka squirrels out here. And Jim says, wow. And then I heard it again, and Jim heard it. And so I said, get your binoculars out. We started glassing way up high in the snowy peaks, and with the rivers running there, so it's hard to pinpoint the sound. And then Jim says, I think I see a bear. And then I looked, I said, no, that's a guy crawling in the snow. And we're 600 miles from Anchorage on the Alaska Peninsula. There's just no people, you know, and it's very, you know, it's very wild and very few people, and a few natives and stuff. And I said, man, there's a problem. Something's wrong, Jim. I don't understand, how can a guy be crawling in the snow up in this mountain? But what we did not know is my Steve Black and Terry, other guide, were flying in the Super Cub earlier, checking on us, and they seen that big bear's tracks, and they were flying up there, and they turned, and I don't know, nobody knows exactly, but the engine died or something, and they, when they turned, they were turned towards the mountain. They went right into the mountain, and Terry died in the accident, and Steve Black, my boss, the outfitter, broke his leg in 3 places, and compression fractures in his back, other things too. But he climbed out of that plane and tied a splint on his leg, and he knew I was in that area, and he was crawling in the snow, and then he was whistling, and it was just, I think God helped me hear that whistle. And anyway, Jim started hiking up there because we were perplexed. What didn't make any sense, And anyway, we didn't get pictures of the bear. He hiked up a ways. And I said, Jim, I got to get this bear skin. The body heat in an animal that big, the hair will actually slip. And if you just can't leave a bear overnight, even though he's in the snow, there's so much heat that it can start spoiling. Even moose, you can gut out a moose, but that's why you got to quarter a moose. There's so much body heat, But anyway, Jim got up, hiked for 30, 40 minutes up that way, and then I put the binoculars on Jim in between skin and the bear, and Jim motioned me, to come help him come up. So I stopped. So I ran up there and caught up with Jim and said, man, something's wrong, And then we hiked up and found out it was my boss, Steve Black. And, he's a tough guy. He's twice as big as Jim and I, and 250 pounds. And he had bones sticking out of his leg and just a mess. And he was in a camouflage jacket, and we started dragging him down this mountain. But the mountain's so steep, and there's fingers, and if you go down the wrong finger, it's cliffs, and he's so heavy we could not drag him back. So I was really careful to run out in front off and on to make sure we went down the correct way. And we got him down to the river, and drug him across the river. And Jim says, or Steve says, and he never complained or nothing. It's a tough guy. And Steve goes, Jaret, and I go, yeah. He said, did you get the bear? And I go, yes. He says, get me in the hide. I'm freezing. And I never even thought of that. It was his idea. And so I went skinning that bear fast, and I skinned it out in probably an hour, but I left the fat on it so I could skin it quicker. I didn't take my time and do a real nice job, but I probably had a 200-pound hide now, because it was so. But I just wanted to get him in the hide, and so I got it skinned out, and Jim made him comfortable as he could, and then we rolled Steve Black up in the bear skin. It's a 10-foot bear. That's 100 square foot. That's a big hide, and we rolled him up in the hide, obviously the hair first, and then we had a base camp down at the beach, but it was 2.5 hour walk, and so we left Steve in the snow, rolled up in the bear hide, and it's about, I don't know, it doesn't get dark in the spring till 11:30 at night. It was probably, I don't remember, 9 o'clock, and so Jim and I took off and hiked back to base camp, and we triggered the ELT off on a 207 airplane that he had, and then we got an army cot, and we got 3 sleeping bags. We got some extra clothing and food and stuff, and then in our backpacks, and we were crossing the rivers, and the tide from the ocean, it was high tide. Tides are really big in Alaska. They're 30 foot. And so the rivers would go up, but we got all soaking wet and all that, but we got everything and came and got back probably 1 or 2 in the morning. And we're worried about Steve going into shock or, who knows. And we got back, he wasn't complaining or nothing. And so we put him inside 2 sleeping bags, and then I put some felt liners on his feet and some little, I don't know, we did a few things, tried to make him comfortable. I had a Coke there and some aspirin, I didn't have much. And then then we had 1 sleeping bag, and Jim and I are cold. That's when I say we crawled in this sleeping bag. You couldn't even zip it up, But anyway, that was only for about 3 hours, and then it was daylight. And then, but to this day, it's kind of funny. Jim still buys really big sleeping bags, But anyway, then Steve, they told me that their other guide was guiding a doctor who was in the next bay over, but I had to climb over this mountain range. And I don't know, it took me I was in my hip boots, and snow was up to deep up to up your waist in places. But I got on deer and caribou trails and zigzagged up the mountain. I got to the top, and then I looked through the binoculars, and I was able to spot their camp. I'd never been there before. Then I hiked on down to their camp, and I had these little flares, emergency flares, and I shot them up in there, shot my 375 3 times. I put my space blanket on a bush next to the tent, and I didn't know what else to do. And I just sat down and I fell asleep. And then about 45 minutes later, they'd heard me. They were out hunting. They came back and woke me up, and I felt like I'd been there. I was kind of out of it, And then I got it together, and I told them all the problems we had. And Gary says, I'll hike over to the next bay, because Fish and Game's doing a herring study, and you guys go back. So I went back to the doctor, and we got back there in the evening time, and Gary had been successful when he got to the Fish and Game, where they were doing that study on herring or something over there, because they had a little CB radio or I don't know what, and they radioed Kodiak Island, and they sent a rescue chopper over to us. And not long after I got back, that chopper, a great big chopper, come in. And I still remember that chopper coming in, because I had that Army cot set up, and that Army cot just flew through the air. I never saw it again. It had so much power, And then they landed, and they had a emergency whatever to carry Steve, and they got Steve all set up, and they're carrying him out, and Steve says stop, and he says, Jaret, and I go, yeah. And he says, fill out. I got 2 more hunters come in. You fill them out. Well, I was not in the mood to got hunters after this, But Steve is a hardcore guy. These are hardcore guys, You lose the guy, but we still got to fill out the hunters, Anyway, I go, yeah, no problem, Steve, And they took him, and then I'm sitting here with a 200-pound bear hide and all the backpacks, and we're all pooped out, and then the Coast Guard guys are all in their helmets and radios, and they go, well, I gotta tell you something. According to Coast Guard protocol, we're not allowed to haul hunters and guns and trophies, and I'm sitting there, oh great, and because they couldn't, you couldn't take us, and I got all this 200-pound bear hide and all this stuff to hike back, and then the other guy says, hey, I'm not looking, but I was so tired, I didn't even get it, and then Jim goes, come on, it's okay, and I go, what, I was just out of it, and so it takes 3 of us to grab this big old bear hide, and throw it in the chopper. And then we threw in the guns and the backpacks, and they took off in 5 minutes. They had us back to base camp over on the beach, and they dumped us out. And it was like, I don't remember what time it was, but and dumped us out, and we were all kind of bummed out, losing our buddy. And then I think we got something to eat, and then we went to bed. And next morning, the doctor, I told him, I said, we're going to be stuck here 4 or 5 days before they get somebody to come get us, and we can break the camp, but start breaking camp and organize things. But I said, I've never seen such good weather, and the bears are really out. And Steve wanted you to get a bear. I know it's it's hard for me to say, but if you like, there's a vantage point just 30 minutes from camp. We can go down there and glass a little bit. And so Jim, and he didn't say much, but they got their gear, and we walked down to the vantage point, and we started glassing. And I've seen a sow and cubs, and these cubs, it's beautiful in the snow because they'll slide for hundreds of yards and wrestle and roll over and over just all the way down the mountain. And it's kind of cool. But we didn't see anything big. And after about 30, 40 minutes, the doctor just tapped me on the shoulder and said, I just shouldn't go back. And we never said another word. Everybody's just bummed out, and we just walked back to the camp and started breaking camp and putting things away. And it took about a week for us to get out of there because they had to bring one at a time in a Super Cub. And you got to fly through Lake Clark's Pass. It's really scary. And the weather's got to be just right because you're flying a little Super Cub between two walls of green ice. You'd blow your mind to see it. But anyway, I'm trying to think what else. We did that. And I remember later I got married, and Steve came down to my wedding, and then I flew out to Santa Cruz Island, and then I invited him and Jim Rockstead and these guys. You're really close to these guys, and my wife couldn't understand why I was bringing these 3 guys on our honeymoon, and that went over like a lead balloon. But they were down from Alaska, and I said, but she never did understand that. But I won't get into that. But anyway, I don't know I'm trying to think what else I can. But then but that's a bear story. I don't know what else to tell.
That
makes sense.
That is probably one of the best stories we've had on our show so far. I'm serious.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I know there was this, sorry about your friend, obviously, but thank you for sharing it. Basically, I wanted to say thank you for sharing it at least, because it really was a very interesting story.
Every trip is different, and I'll tell you a story that we didn't get nobody got hurt and nobody shot a big buck, but it's very memorable. It sounds stupid, but I finished guiding in the fall at Rainy Pass Lodge, and I flew into Anchorage, and all the guides are glad to they're all tired of it, but I just want more hunting because I never could get out of my blood. And somebody called me, and I called my buddy up. He says, hey, we're going to Colorado deer and elk hunting. Why don't you fly down to Denver and then get another flight to, I forgot where, but and then we'll pick you up and we'll go hunting. And we're staying at my friend's place and blah, blah. And so I did, and all I had was my 375. And I went down there and I bought a deer tag, and we went hunting for 5 or 6 days, and they shot a few bucks, and I never shot a deer. I didn't see anything of any size, but we had a great time. And the last day, I said, man, I just want we're going to go out one more time. And I said, I'm going to shoot the first buck I see because I want to take some meat back. And they're going to drive me back to California. And we went out and I saw a little forky, nothing special. And I popped him in the head of 375 and gutted him out. And then those guys come walking over, to 3 of them. They go, "Oh, you got one." And then they're looking at my gun. They go, "What are you doing with this cannon? That's too big." I said, "Oh, it's accurate. It doesn't." and about that time, a raven flew over. I call them crows, but anyway, it was high in the air, and I took that 375, and right or wrong, I used to like to shoot at stuff in the air, and I hit that bird, and I call it crow killer, but I hit that bird dead center at that 375, and it was better than fireworks with the feathers coming down.
Yeah, there's not much left at that point, without a doubt.
Raining feathers, and those guys were laughing and going, "Wow!" And we were all laughing and stuff. And anyway, we got the buck out and came home. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from my friend, and he says, "You won't believe it." And I go, "What?" Well, his cousin was with us, and he's married to an Indian. And this girl had a baby the same day that I shot the crow, so to speak. And the Indian tradition is to name the baby what happened that day. And they named the baby Jaret Crow Killer. But now I go diving. I'm diving with my friend Pulitzer in the Bahamas, and he built a house in Crested Butte, Colorado, and they invited me to come over there diving or fishing and hanging out, And so I go over there, and then they heard this story, about Jaret. And I go, "You're kidding." And then they took me to the Silver Spur restaurant or bar or something. And they go, "Where's Crow Killer?" And I met the guy's 25 years old now, because, time goes by. And,
Sure.
and he's a real nice guy, and he invites me to go fishing. and I never did Pete was tied up, and we couldn't go. But I don't know, I don't know how to say it. There's just a lot of stories. It's not all about the big trophy.
And believe it or not, you segued perfectly. I wrote a question down while you were telling your story. Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask this, and then we could probably, we're heading towards the end here. We could start wrapping it up soon. So, Jaret, with everything you've been through, all you've encountered throughout your hunting career, and just the lifestyle that you live, when you look at the hunting world and community now, what does your gut tell you? Does it seem promising for the hunting community? Are you happy with what you're seeing? Is there something that maybe frustrates you in the new era of the hunting world?
Even at my age, I wanted to be a guide because I couldn't afford to go to Alaska and go hunting 50 years ago. It's just everybody can't afford. My friend just came back from a brown bear hunt, and a guy, they're 25, 50,000, big money, and we're just not all fortunate enough to be able to afford these hunts. And I hate to see hunting get so commercialized and expensive, but it's what it is. And I guess what bothers me is I feel like technology is almost a hunter's eulogy. I know people like, I talked to Swarovski, and I go, "God, what's with all these big scopes?" And the rep says, Jaret, don't you know everybody's a sniper now? And I just I always bragged about how close I could get into the animals, and now everybody's bragging about how far away they're shooting. And I don't think, I know people love the long shots, and I think it's good for varmint hunting and stuff, but I just don't think it's really ethical to do this long, and that's my opinion, this long range shooting. and there's so much new equipment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Oh, you are absolutely. Yeah, and that we talk about it a lot. That you have to take that on as a hunter and
Yeah,
as a sportsman to truly train and practice and know your equipment. Let's say if you are going to execute one of these long range shots, you owe it to that animal. It better be within your realm of capability to put a fair, and lethal shot on that animal. So I happen to agree with you on that 100%.
I just feel like even if you can hit them in the head every time at 1,000 yards, I don't think it's ethical,
Mhm.
But that's. I mean, I think that's better for varmints. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's just I just enjoy getting close,
Yes. Chris, I don't know how we add anything to the stories we just heard tonight.
Well, I do. All right, so I have one final question before we wrap it up here. If a man as experienced as you, for somebody just getting into the sport, a brand new hunter, if you had one piece of advice, just one thing to leave with a new hunter, what would it be?
Ooh. What would it be for a new hunter?
Yeah.
What advice?
Just one piece of advice for a new hunter.
Well, I think it's just about being out and out in the outdoors. I'm 75, and they wanted me to help on a brown bear hunt 2 weeks ago, and I didn't go, and it really frustrates me to this minute. I didn't go because different. I just had that new hip, and this and that, and we're falling apart. But what I'm trying to think how to answer that. What advice would I tell somebody that's a new hunter? To get out and enjoy the outdoors. Don't be so worried about that all these getting all these measurements of animals. Like we never used to, it's a 10-foot bear, it's a 30-inch buck, it's a 40-inch ram. All these standards. Just get out and enjoy. I mean, I enjoy just go shoot a rabbit. It's not all about the trophies. It's being with your friends and being outdoors. I really, I hike every morning. I walk 4 miles, and I do yoga. People laugh at me, but I do yoga, and and just trying, and it helps me. But I take my binoculars every morning and spot deer, and and people never. I go out year round and spot animals right here in town, and you don't have to go out and kill everything. I just go out to spot them, and I enjoy that. I climb. It's kind of like my own meditation. I climb up some hill in the dark, a mile from the house or 2 miles, and you wouldn't believe the deer, bear, lion I find right around town. Right here close. But I think people in just plain old glassing is fun. You don't have to shoot everything.
All right. Well, I mean, that's what this is all about. Just everybody get out there and do it.
Yeah, I know it's discouraging because everything costs so much.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to change that. Because we got more people. It's in our town. Rent's gotten too high. It's just everything. So it is I do feel sorry, or can appreciate the new generation. It's hard for them, to even have the opportunity to go and do things. It is much more harder.
I would agree 100%.
I mean, this is our very small contribution. Chris and I take it very deeply to heart, trying to keep that passion for the outdoors. Whatever our whole show is based on, whatever you do outdoors, keeping that spirit alive. Because we don't want to be in a world where there's no hunting, no fishing, no hiking, whatever. And just like you said, just being able to go out and just glass and enjoy nature in its purest, simplest form. And you're definitely in like-minded company here. I can promise you that, as well as all of our viewers. It's a big part of who we are, and we want it to last for the generations to come.
Exactly. It's just enjoyable that, I love my Swarovskis, and man, I use them. And the Swarovski rep came and visited me this morning, and he was showing me some new optics. Are just beautiful, and it was really foggy, and I said, geez, I don't know if we can see much because it's so foggy. And we just drove a mile or two from the house and took a little walk, and he didn't have a lot of time. And I said, well, the deer are already bedded, the few deer around here right close. And I just pulled out the deer call this morning and blew on it 3 or 4 times. And I said, I'll wake a couple up maybe. And out come a doe with a fawn, and he there you got to look at something, but it's all good. You don't have to shoot the big trophy every time,
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Producer Chris, like I say, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end.
Yeah, unfortunately, I will, Jaret, I hope we can get you back on for a part 2 to this, because I know you have a wealth of stories, and we want to, we'd love to have you back on and keep, because if there's one thing that we like doing, that's what started this whole show, is we love sitting around talking about hunting. So if you're up for it, we can get you back on and definitely hear some more stories, because we didn't even get into moose hunting or caribou hunt. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. So so we'd love to get you back on.
I've been around my share of moose.
Well, that'll be part 2 then, without a doubt.
Moose hunting's like getting married. They say it's a lot of work.
Well, there you go. You heard it, and I mean,
but the hardest part of this was you guys drug me getting that computer going.
You did good. No, you go for the next time.
That's it. The next one we'll get it squared away, and we'll have it from Jump Street. We'll have you squared away. So,
geez, gosh, well, nice talking to you. I guess this is what you wanted.
Absolutely.
But I was going to tell you, but anyway. But I am familiar with hunting.
All right, so Jaret, thank you for taking the time out to meet with us tonight, and I can't wait to get you back on it to hear some more stories, because this is honestly, like, I don't know, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing the wealth of experience that you have.
I feel very fortunate, but thank you, and call me anytime if I can help.
We appreciate that. We definitely will.
Will do. And I mean, I have some notes for Swarovski, as I'm a user myself. So
yeah, Swarovski's got some real surprises coming out.
Don't tell me that.
Break open the wallet.
They just keep making. Their goal is to make things the very best they can, and then they work to make it better.
There you go.
And they're just unbelievable. And I've guided the owners numerous times, and they're really good people. That was 50 years ago, though.
Well, that's good to hear, because I'm a big fan of their products. I use them, so we'll definitely have to talk on that.
We got a guy.
That's it. So again, Jaret, thank you for taking the time out to sit with us tonight. I know it was a little rough getting started, but we got through it, and I definitely can't wait for part 2 of this. So,
I screw up that part.
we'll get you squared away. We'll be all right. So,
quick shout out to everybody on Instagram Live that was tuning in. Obviously, all the loyal watchers and followers. We appreciate you guys. We had some good numbers tonight. It was a great story we got to hear tonight. So thank you guys for always making the effort, carving out a little time, and sharing your Friday night with us. As always, please keep sharing the page. You guys know it by now, but on YouTube at Pursuit Live, looking to get some subscriber numbers up. Please just share the word on that, and all the info you can be found at Pursuit Live Official on Instagram. As always, we just ask, because of the social media world that we're in, interactions on the page, it all helps, and it helps us reach out to have great guests on like this. So follow along, subscribe wherever you can, and just keep passing the word. We're having a lot of fun doing this. We got Chris back stateside, and the schedule is healthy, so we're not going anywhere.
And that's it. So thank you everybody for watching again. Jaret, thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you, John.
And we'll definitely there's definitely going to be part 2. So again, thank you, Jaret. Thank you, Dave. Thank you everybody who tuned in. And remember, you can catch us here every Friday, 7:30, right here on Pursuit Live.
Okay, happy night.